Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, this is probably one of the best ways of researching perennials. Like, we all grow perennials. Some of us have perennial borders, mixed borders with shrubs and perennials and bulbs, and many other things. But we don't really have a way of knowing what and where they should go, and also what they do require. So what you want to do is you want to start doing your research, because it's not just a blend of color and bloom time, but it's also texture, it's the care and maintenance, and the proper situation of each and every perennial so that they can support each other. Very often, if you plant the right perennials next to each other, one will actually be the support, or let's just say stake, for the one next to it. This is something that can be done, planned, and worked on, but you have to know your perennials. So, it also means that if you're going to mix in some shrubs, you're going to want to be able to put the shrub, which is going to be a certain size and width, also into a spot that is not going to be covered by something else. So you want to have depth. You don't want a stadium effect, but you do want a character garden. In other words, a garden with depth that goes in, out, blooms at different times with different textures, etc. So what you want to do is you want to start doing your research. You want to design your garden. But you need to design it so that you can do certain things. First of all, yes, you have to go and prepare the soil. This is the place your plants are going to live. So you're going to work in the proper organic matter, etc., to make your soil moist, well drained, well aerated, but also you're going to have to make sure that the pH is correct for all the different perennials that you're going to be putting in that spot. You certainly don't want to go and put a dianthus or carnations, which require an alkaline or neutral soil, next to a plant that requires an acidic soil, such as Helleborus, correct? Planting and renovation is important, so you're going to plant them. You've done the preparation, you've done the planning, you're going to properly plant them, but you have to be able to reach them to do common maintenance. So if a plant requires deadheading on a regular basis in order to give you sustained bloom, don't put it where you can't reach it. So you need to judge it by its height as well as by its blooming time, color, texture, size, shape. All of those things have to play in there. So planning is probably the biggest part of your whole garden. It's not the planting, it is the planning of it. You also want to be able to put plants in that if they're going to get a pest or a disease, you certainly do not want to go and put a plant in that is going to be very susceptible to insects and disease in your area, or the plants that are susceptible to the same thing in the same area. Sometimes it's better with aeration, sometimes it's more sun, sometimes it's less sun. So you've got to deal with that as well. So picking and choosing pests, diseases, and the plants that you know are going to be able to survive whatever is the biggest problem in your garden. But also there are plants and there are bugs, insects, diseases that you can't control. So you need to be able to get close to these plants, do what controls you are allowed. In our gardens, we're not allowed to spray any pesticides at all. So therefore, that is a key reason for the selection of your perennials when you do your planting, but also for your flowering shrubs that you're mixing in as well. Staking is an individual thing. Sometimes you can use other plants to support them. I have seen people who cut down parts of woody shrubs and use them in a mixed perennial garden to support other taller plants. So what they do is they work them into the ground, stand them up, and of course let the plants grow up and over. Now you're going to have to judge your heights of the stake to the height of what the plant is going to achieve. Or you can put smaller stakes in, and as the plant grows and achieves greater size and width, you may have to add more or taller ones, that the sticks or the branches. And you want to, of course, pick plants and woody plants that are well branched so that there is more support. You also need to know when you're going to be dividing these plants. Some plants are divided every few years, some are every 5 years, and some, let's be honest, if you don't get around to it in your lifetime, are probably still going to be blooming after you are gone. So, it is so important. So, then you've got all of that done. You need to know and plan your pruning. Your pruning and your proper pruning. Now, pruning is done for several different reasons. First of all, deadheading to make the plant look good. But some plants you leave a few heads on during the growing season for interest, but not a lot. You don't leave them all often because it detracts from the strength of the plant. But you can leave a few. And Siberian iris are an example of that. Pinching and disbudding. One of the most effective ways of controlling, let's say, sedum autumn joy is when it gets to a certain height, you want to pinch it. Now, if you do this, you're going to get a consistent height. And if you're running these either as a drift or as a hedge, then that is actually important. You want to be able to get to them to do that. It also means that when they do flower, they're all going to flower at about the same time, and they're all going to be the same height. And that can be very, very effective. So important to consider doing that. Thinning them down in order to create larger flowers, also important. Deadheading to make other flowers last longer or to rebloom, another consideration. You also have, of course, the pruning and maintenance for winter and spring, and you're going to need to know when you're going to be pruning certain plants. Not all of them are done in the fall, not all of them are done in the spring, and some can be done anytime between. So go and research that as well. So when you're going to go and research, you want to be able to get as much information as possible. So let's give you an example of some research. I'm not going to tell you the name of the plant, okay? Maybe I will at the end. But this is going to be a plant, and this is the information that you're going to need on every plant that you put in to a mixed border or into your perennial garden. First of all, you want to know the color. So the violet blue spikes of flowers, deep green palmate, divided foliage that is lobed. It's going to get 3 to 4 feet high and 1 feet wide. It likes part shade. It blooms July and August, and it's hardy to zone 4 to 8. Okay? When pruning this plant, you want to make sure that you basically wash your hands. You don't get any in your mouth or in cuts, simply because the plant is toxic, and therefore you can have serious health problems if you do ingest any part of this plant or get it into cuts. So when you are finished pruning, you're going to have to wash your hands with soap and water very quickly. And that's important. So you're going to be deadheading to a lateral bud. Now, this will give you a smaller second blooming. So that's a good idea. The secondary flower flush, you cut down to new basal foliage of the old foliage declines. So in other words, after that, you have to cut them down again. So you're actually deadheading. You're cutting back to a basal branch, and then you're doing all the way back down to a base of clumps of the leaves at the bottom. This is all the same plant. As the old foliage declines, you want to fertilize the plant, particularly if the leaves are pale. You want to still enjoy them, so if you do all of this, you will get some sporadic small flowers which do occur from the basal growth. The basal leaves will overwinter. You can prune them off in the spring, particularly if they're not very nice. The plants can be cut back or pinched to control height, although this usually means that the large terminal spike will produce smaller but more numerous flower spikes. Okay, and also that the flower spikes will come later in the season, and that's timing, so you're going to have to go and work that out. The flowers are usually sturdier if you've done this, and you want to go and cut them back. Most established plants are cut back about by half the first year, and subsequent years by about half, and then to maybe 18 inches tall. This is quite common. Some gardeners prune them back by 6 inches when the plants are 2.5 feet tall, and then again another 6 inches when they're 3.5 feet tall. Staking is sometimes necessary depending on variety and the pruning techniques for controlling height. If the plants are not pruned for height control, side flower spikes can be pinched out to increase the size of the terminal buds if desired. So you want to go and make sure that they're going to do well. So some maintenance is required, obviously. It prefers a rich, high organic, moist soil. You have to avoid hot locations and the burning sun. Water during dry periods. It won't tolerate tree root competition. Division can be done in early spring or fall, but plants are slow to establish, so they're best left undisturbed for many years, and often require staking. There are related varieties. There's a Bressingham spire in this group of plants. It gets 2.5 to 3 feet tall. It was selected by Allen Bloom, and it doesn't require staking. It's a good choice since pruning is not necessary. Then there's Arendicii. This one is a late flowering variety. It does require staking, even though it has very strong stems. It will get to 3 to 4 feet tall. And then there's Sparks variety, which grows 4 to 5 feet tall. The plants cut back by half when they're 15 inches tall, and that's what you do require. This is the type of research you have to do. You have to select the right varieties, etc. when you're pruning them back and you're getting them pruned, the flowers will also get smaller, but they usually delay the blooms by 14 days. What plant is this? Well, there's a white one too, but I just want you to know it only gets to 2 feet tall. It doesn't require staking, and it's going to bloom in May and early June. It's called Ivorine. So, if it's going to be deadheaded, the seeds itself are not really a problem with this particular plant. So, more division of older plants. It's going to make the plants a little more expensive, but therefore you're going to benefit, but you're going to need to know how to look after them. And the group of plants I've been talking about, Aconitum napellus or monkshood. So remember, pick your plant, know your plants, and their maintenance, and maintenance that matches your abilities to and time to do. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.